Good afternoon, Irish fans, and welcome to the next episode of the Irish Fan Podcast. My name is Danny, where I am not an Irish fan. I am a Irish fan. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. Hey, look, I'm going to get into some things. I got some thoughts. I have no idea how long this episode is going to go, and to be honest, I don't know how long any episode is going to go when I'm talking about Notre Dame football. Could be 10 minutes, could be 30. I don't know. But I've got some thoughts of everything leading up to the end of the season, kind of a little bit of a season recap, plus our current rankings, where I think we're going to be, and what it all means in perspective. Oh yeah, by the way, we just signed probably the best recruiting class that I have seen in my adult life. So we're gonna get into some of those things today. Before we do, please do me a huge favor. Like, share, comment, and subscribe so that every single time I post an episode and we're talking Irish football, you guys know. It really helps me out. And it helps out the channel get a little bit bigger, person by person by person. It's incrementally climbing up, but hey, look, it's okay. I'm doing this because I love talking Irish football, and I like hearing myself talk, and that's about it. So let's get into it. These rankings are nuts. They're crazy. I've never seen. I mean, in my life, I have seen a lot of weird things in the world of college football. I've been a fan since 1990. I've been watching the Irish since 1990. So we're talking almost 40 years of watching Notre Dame football, 40 seasons of watching Notre Dame football. And in that 40 seasons, we've only had a handful of good ones. Now, when I say good ones, I mean national championship competing ones. This is a theme on my show. It's going to be a theme on my show going forward until we win a national championship. But you're going to hear me say that a lot, the difference between competing and winning a national championship. Obviously, we have not won a national championship since 1988. That would be 37 years to those who are counting. Woosah. Anyway, how is all this? How does that, and what am I specifically saying here? Look, college football playoff rankings. We moved down a spot, even though in the last 2 weeks we outscored our opponents. I think it's 109-27. I mean, a level of domination that we have really, quite honestly, against. And this is also has to be stressed, against FBS Power 4 conference teams. Okay, there's a lot of other teams that have been playing and winning in the last couple of weeks, but Notre Dame is one of the few that's been doing it against Power 4 conference teams, and doing it in very dominant fashion. And yet we still managed to move down in the rankings. I wonder why. Who was the team that bumped us? Who was the team that bumped us after losing to a crap Auburn team? It was Alabama. The committee, college football, they don't even hide things anymore. The simplest answer, and the president of the CFP committee said it. The reason why Alabama jumped Notre Dame in the rankings is because of the way that they played against Auburn on Saturday. Yeah, that's it. They they beat Auburn by 4 points, and they needed. Auburn was driving. They were driving on the last play, the last drive of the game, and they needed a fumble by Auburn in order to win that game. But it's the reason. It's because of how they played. That's why they jumped Notre Dame. Look, that is such a stick in the mud fu answer. The real answer, and everybody knows it. And if you're in the SEC, you don't care. I mean, I wouldn't. It's a buffer for Alabama should they lose to Georgia in the SEC title game. Now, that's the truth. The real question is, do they deserve that? You could make an argument that they do because they have. I'm looking at this year's schedule. We all know that the bias that the SEC and Alabama, specifically Alabama, gets is because of the Nick Saban era in the last 10 years. Again, an argument could be made that they deserve that, but each season is supposed to be unique, right? Every single team is unique from season to season to season. We love our history, We love the fact that, back in the day we used to win national championships all the time, and I'm talking about Notre Dame. We love our history. We go there to reminisce and to remember and to hope for the future, okay? But each team is unique. Notre Dame and Georgia and Alabama and Texas and any other team, Oklahoma, should be evaluated year to year to year based on how they're doing in that given year. That's the resume isn't what Nick Saban did in 2015 or any other year. Okay, it wasn't the back-to-back national championships that he won in 2012 and 2013. It's what they're doing now. That's the resume. So, having that said, they do have they actually had a team drop out of the rankings. So they have 3 wins against top 25 teams. Notre Dame has 1, and there's other teams with 2 or 1 or 3 wins against top 25 teams, and it should all be based on their record. This is one of the crux of this arguments right now. This is one of the things being talked about nationally. Look, okay, so it's being talked about the record, strength of schedule, this and that. The records matter. The head-to-head games matter. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Right? All this matters. So do the losses. Everyone wants to talk about the committee doesn't look at losses. They look at wins against top 25 teams. You can't. They don't, for one, and you can't do that for two. Especially when you want to pick and choose what teams you want to do that for. All right? College football was, and always will be until we get to a playoff-like regimen like the NFL. You're in divisions. You want to go to the playoff. You win a division, that kind of thing. College football always has been, always will be, and is now a game of perception. This committee, now, it used to be the AP. Before that, it was other various polls. Then it was the BCS. Now it's the playoff committee. It is who the playoff committee perceives to be the best teams in the country. Period. End of discussion. That's how it is. For better or for worse, that's how it is. Notre Dame's been getting a lot of flack over the last couple of weeks because they have been ranked ahead of Miami and Alabama, despite Alabama's multiple wins against top 25 opponents and Miami's obvious head-to-head matchup against Notre Dame and the fact that they won that game. This is what nobody wants to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about this. It's who you also lose to, okay? Yes, we have 2 losses. Yes, Alabama and Miami have 2 losses. Who did they lose to? Well, they lost to teams that are worse than the teams Notre Dame lost to. And in the wins that Notre Dame has had, we have been far more dominant than either Alabama or Miami. The committee saw to it that we were rewarded for that. The dominance and who Alabama and Miami have lost to. Okay? It's not our fault that Alabama got smoked in the beginning of the year by Florida State, who's terrible, who Stanford beat. And by the way, who we absolutely waxed last Saturday. It was 35-3 at halftime. I don't care about what they did in the second half. It was 35-3 at halftime. Shut your mouths. They beat a team that beat Alabama. Well, you can't look at college football that way. You have to. That's the world we live in. It's perception. That is how we evaluate the teams that should be in front and should be ahead. Okay? That's it. Period. End of discussion. But the committee saw to it that they gave Alabama a little bit of a buffer. You guys should be grateful. Because should you lose, they're still trying to make it, even though you'll be a 3-loss team, they're still trying to make it so that you can squeak in there. Especially if you lose close. And by the way, and this is just my fandom speaking, you've had your glory, okay? So you've won 6 national championships and you've been dominant in the last decade and a half, okay? Just shut up. I'm sick and tired of Alabama fans. And I'm sick and tired of Miami. I'm sick and tired. Let me save that for last for just 1 second, because what I think I'm more sick and tired of is the conversation of Notre Dame not being in the conference. Now that's everyone in the SEC, that's everyone in the ACC, that is pretty much everyone in the country. Every time you hear an announcer on ESPN talk about Notre Dame and the fact that they could or couldn't be in the college football playoff, it's because they're not in a conference. Well, Notre Dame's obvious disadvantage is they're not in a conference. I've said this before. Shut up. Shut up. It is the oldest, most tired conversation in the world. 7 at-large teams will not be conference champions in the playoff. And there's a scenario, if Duke wins on Saturday, where the ACC and a conference champion, Duke, will not be in the playoff, including and Miami will not be in the playoff. Okay? There will be at least 7, maybe this year, possibly 8 at-large non-conference champion teams in the playoff. So shut up. Just shut up. The national champion last year didn't play in the conference championship game, didn't win their conference, got smoked in the last game of the year to a 7-5 Michigan team. But they were perceived to be the best team in the country. And look, they were. They were. Going back a decade, 2014. They lost to a 4-7 Virginia Tech team. Oh, I'm talking about Ohio State. And then they went on a tear at the end of the year. And the College Football Playoff Committee sought to reward them for their efforts, for being dominant. And they didn't give any credence to who they lost to. They rewarded Ohio State, and guess what? They won a national championship. And they had to beat some really good teams in order to do that. Alabama being one of them. And Nick Saban coached Alabama team. I am not an apologist for Ohio State whatsoever. I'm trying to highlight and illustrate the importance of perception. Who is and isn't the best team? That's called, because that's the game we love. That's it. Period. It is perceived that Notre Dame is one of the top 5. Yes, top 5 teams in the country. They are. They are. This year they are. But even still, the committee is looking to reward the SEC because of what they've done for the last 10 years. And it boggles the mind. It boggles the mind. It's hard to talk about, and the simplest explanation is they're rewarding the SEC for conference play, and they are punishing Notre Dame for not being in a conference. And I think a lot of this is lobbying from the SEC and the ACC. A lot of it. And I think if everything goes to plan on Saturday, when I say plan, I mean the favorites win the game. Regardless of what happens with Alabama or Georgia, I think the crux of this whole thing is BYU. Texas Tech needs to beat BYU, and hopefully in dominant fashion, and we can put that to bed, and Notre Dame will be in the playoff. Honestly, I don't care if we host a game or not. I really don't. I think we can win. There's not a single team in the country that scares me, Ohio State included. There's not a single team in the country that scares me around. I would love a rematch with Texas A&M, which is what it currently holds. It won't be that. I can almost guarantee, should Alabama lose to Georgia, I think Alabama and Notre Dame will just be flip-flopped. Miami will be held out, and the rest of the state rankings will hold. Alabama will face Texas A&M, and will face Oklahoma. And I am fine with that. I don't care that it's that it would be in Stillwater. Sorry, Oklahoma State. Yeah, I don't care that it would be held at Oklahoma. I don't care. Because again, they do not scare me. Brent Venables and his cheating ways don't scare me. I think we can win. I think we can win at Oklahoma, and I think we will. Should that be the matchup? But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. The playoff and how it's going right now. The only way Notre Dame gets held out legitimately is if BYU wins. If BYU loses and Notre Dame gets held out, it is just flippant, blatant corruption. That's just all I can see it. That's the only way. Now you might be saying, well, what about the head-to-head matchup with Miami? They deserve to be in. I want to remind everybody of something when it comes to head-to-head matchups, okay? I am a huge head-to-head matchup guy. The games do matter, okay? They do. Especially when it pertains to the current season, okay? Having that said, Notre Dame has been in this situation before, but in reverse. Nobody Nobody in the current sphere of college football wants to talk about the 1993 season because Notre Dame was square in the crosshairs of this conversation in 1993. The same conversation, the exact same thing happened to Notre Dame because of perception. In 1993, game of the century, number one, Florida State, another Florida team, ironically enough, I think that has something to do with it too, goes on the road and plays Notre Dame, the number two team in the country, number one versus number two. The last time that that's really happened, I'm not counting Alabama and the BCS team, when it was Notre Dame number one and Alabama number two, that was an absolute drubbing. But I digress. The last game of real significance, the last real game of the century that we played in 1993. We beat the number one team in the country, and we have a head-to-head win versus the future national champion. But the perceived best team in the country was Florida State, still, because we lost to an inferior opponent. By the way, it wasn't, I'm not talking about some 5-7 team. I'm not talking about we got, getting upset by Stanford or something like that. They were ranked 17th in the country, Boston College, when they beat us. Okay, so it wasn't like we lost. And by the way, and we made a huge comeback in that game, and it took Boston College everything it had for them to go down there and kick a 42-yard field goal to win the game. But we lost to an inferior opponent. So you have two teams at the end of the season with a head-to-head game in which Notre Dame won, but Notre Dame lost to the inferior opponent. Therefore, the perceived best team in the country was Florida State, and they were awarded the national championship. Nobody wants to remember this. No one. I haven't heard it a single time in any of the broadcasts, in any of the pundits, in any of the shows. I haven't even heard it talked about amongst the Notre Dame sphere. No one's even mentioning this. This happened to us. We were withheld our 12th national championship because of this current problem, this current perception problem that college football has right now. Miami has the exact same record as us. They have a head-to-head win against us. But everyone's talking about them being the better team because of that head-to-head, despite the fact that they are inferior opponents that they lost to. So which is it? I'm legitimately asking this question because I don't know myself. Which is it? What? If by everyone else's standards of today, Notre Dame should have a 12th national championship in 1993. There are people that will defend in Florida specifically, and those that play in the South, both ways of thinking. Florida State should have won the national championship in 1993, and Miami should be ahead of Notre Dame right now. They don't match. They don't fit. One conflicts with the other. And I haven't heard a single person anywhere in the Notre Dame media sphere mention this. This happened to us. And when I say Notre Dame needs to do something about it, there's things that I've had problems with the Notre Dame administration for with years. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast. It's one of the reasons why Notre Dame hasn't won a national championship in 37 years. Is because there hasn't been enough done. I blame Notre Dame for this. This is what I'm trying to say. That this perception thing, what happened in 93, what's happened in the last 37 years, what's happening right now. I do. I blame Notre Dame for this. And I blame, if they get held out, I think, yes, I stand by my comments. I think it will be just blatant corruption. But I also will blame Notre Dame the most. Because we had the opportunity, if Drake Bowen knocks down that pass on the 4th and 11, we win the game. If Christian Gray doesn't drop a clear interception, we win the game. If one play is made, one play in that game is made in our favor, we win the game. You could make an argument the same thing in Miami. We win one of those games where we're in the top 5 and we're sitting back with our hands crossed on our head and watching teams spoil other teams' seasons, and our fate is left in our hands. And it's not necessarily the kids' fault. These teams, that the 2 best teams that they played were the first 2 games of the year. And you really can't even blame the administration for that, because they have no idea who's going to be good year in and year out. This Texas A&M game was scheduled, I think, in 2014 or 2015. So we had no idea that Texas A&M was going to be good this year. No idea that Carson Beck was going to be a transfer to Miami, and he was just going to be the more poised veteran player on the field that day. And that was the difference between a win and a loss for Miami and Notre Dame. That was it. He was just a little bit more poised and made a couple more plays because he was the veteran quarterback. That's it. That was it. Period. That's the only reason why they won. Ruben Bain. No. He had a great game. He's a great player. But Carson Beck was the difference between a dub and a loss that game. And it's one of those things where, no one can foresee who's going to be good year in and year out. So it's not necessarily the player's fault. It's not necessarily administration's fault. What I mean by this is we haven't done enough. We didn't do enough this year, yes, but we haven't done enough as an administration, as a school, to put Notre Dame on as much of the top as they possibly can. They are doing a lot. They have done a lot in the last 10 years. They have. Renovations, new facilities, the Goog renovation, things like that. Those are the things that separate programs. The billionaires that exist in Oregon, and that they've built the Nest over there, which is the state-of-the-art facility. And they have that sways recruits one way or the other. It does. Those things matter to recruits. And those kinds of things Notre Dame has lacked on and hasn't done well enough in the last 37 years. They've started to do better, and they are coming up to the point where it may be no longer an issue. And so it has gotten there. Or at least it's getting there if it hasn't gotten there. But we're still suffering some of the ill effects of Notre Dame's negligence of the late 90s and 2000s. We still are. We still are. Because we didn't do anything then. And the SEC and Alabama and Georgia, they have. And they get the bias. They get the benefit of the doubt. And we don't. That squarely is our fault. That rests on our shoulders. Again, we have done a lot in the last 10 years to close that gap. And it will never be closed. It will never be closed until we win a national championship, period. That's when it's closed. That's when everyone asks, is this a gap-closing quarterback? Is this a gap-closing running back? Is this a gap-closing offensive line? The answer is no, it is not until we win a national championship. And then when we win a national championship, yes, you can say the gap has been closed. And then maybe Notre Dame will start getting the benefit of the doubt. So, all of that to say is, I'm a firm believer that if Notre Dame does not get in the playoff, yes, it's because of corruption, because Notre Dame definitely deserves to be in the playoff. They are one of the 12 best teams in the country. They just are. You have, what's his name? Voice of college football. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. He does a weekly rankings, the rankings that make sense. It's so funny, man. These rankings, these people that come out with rankings. I mean, I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I'm biased. I'll admit it. I will admit it. And he is an Ohio State fan, and all of these other guys. I love Steve Dace, and he's more of a political commentator, but he's a huge Michigan fan, and he has his own Michigan podcast called the Michigan Podcast, and he bleeds, blue and go blue and all that, and he does his best to be truthful on that show. And I'm not saying he's not truthful. He doesn't lie about anything. You can clearly see his bias when it comes to Michigan, his hatred for other teams, and that, so to speak. And you get to see the same thing with Voice of College Football and some of these other guys, and myself included. And he does and anyway, the Voice of College Football, he does a weekly rankings show, and he's got Notre Dame 14th. I'm just like, come on. I mean, come on. Which is it? He'd probably be a guy, and I'm making things up right now, but he'd probably be a guy that would think that Florida State deserved to be the national champion in 1993 because they had the better loss. Well, again, the answer here now is like, okay, you clearly don't like Notre Dame, and the answer to that, to tie this up and put it in a bow, is you don't like Notre Dame because they're not in a conference. That's it. That is it. That's all this is about. The conferences want a piece of Notre Dame. ESPN wants a piece of Notre Dame. The CFP wants a piece of Notre Dame. Everyone wants a piece of Notre Dame. The Big Ten wants a piece of Notre Dame. The ACC wants a piece. The ACC, man, if Notre Dame were to join the ACC full stop, man, it would save that conference. It would save them. Florida State and Miami, they're actively trying to leave the ACC for the SEC. They are actively trying to do this. This is a thing. And Notre Dame joining would absolutely, they would save the ACC. So the ACC is going on a campaign to make sure that okay, you're not going to join us? Well, fine. We're going to destroy you as a program. And we're going to go on the campaign. You're not going to make the playoffs this year. You're not going to make them any year if you lose a game. If you don't join our conference. That's what the ACC is doing. The Big Ten's playing their normal, you should have joined us in 1946 thing. And then the SEC is like, we don't need anybody. Screw you. So that's what this all comes down to. It's just the whole same old tired argument. We're not in a conference. If you played in a conference championship game, then you'd have your destiny would be in your own hands. Just shut up. Okay. Do you say that to the other teams not playing for conference championships? We'll know that they play in a conference. Oh, like the Big Ten this year? Will you have 3 good teams? Maybe. Everyone else is terrible. Everyone else sucks. And year in and year out, you really only have 3 or 4 good teams. So it's just a crapshoot on which one of those 3 teams you're going to play. If you're Ohio State, for example, they played Texas, who has shown that they're not as good as everyone thought that they were, and Illinois. That's it. That's all they played. Those are the only... We played at Michigan this year. No. They're a very average team at best. Very average. I'm just sick and tired of the same old conference trope that people give to Notre Dame every single year. It's stupid. I'm tired of it. I'm sick and tired of it. And if the Notre Dame gets held out of the playoff, that's why. It's just corrupt. And the CFP committee, at best, were lobbied hard. I say lobby with dollar signs around that word, by the SEC and specifically the ACC to not let Notre Dame in the playoff. And if you say it's because of the head-to-head matchup, well, then you better give Notre Dame a posthumous national championship from 1993. Because according to that argument, we should have won the national championship because we had a head-to-head win against Florida State. How do you like them apples? I'm going to end it there. This was the Dirish Fan Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please, again, like, share, comment, subscribe, all those things, because it helps this show get out on YouTube, which is the only platform I'm on right now. So help me out. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening to all the way to the end, I love you. You're probably a family member. Peace out. Go Irish.